All right, this house in Snohomish, Washington is listed at $550,000, and I'm going to be walking through what it would look like to buy this house with $50,000 in cash, so that you can hopefully reference some more concrete and reliable information relevant to your market as you're thinking through the process of buying a house. I'll walk you through two different quotes, both using $50,000 that result in different monthly payments because we use the cash differently and structure the deal a little bit differently. And then I'll talk briefly about what kind of income it would take to qualify for this kind of monthly payment. My name is Landon Buto, and I'm a mortgage advisor with Cleveland Street Mortgage based here in Bothell, Washington. And this channel exists to help you in the early stages of thinking about buying a house. All right, let's look briefly at some of the house pictures and specifics before we get into the numbers so that you have an idea of what you're looking at. So here we'll clip through some of the pictures real quick. You can see it's kind of a unique place. It's a cool looking place. Updated, but not super modern. So I'll maybe attach the listing here in the description so you can see that as well. You can look for yourself. But there's some of the pictures. It's 2-bed, 2-bath. And okay, I'm going to look briefly at the taxes here. And so this will become relevant in just a minute. But a lot of times you can see somewhat of a tax history here on Zillow. But you can get a better idea. Sometimes these aren't always super accurate, or they're just going to change for some reason. You can get a better idea by clicking over to the county website. And generally, sometimes even there, it's a little bit tricky to tell, but generally, there's this section here with distribution of current taxes. That's going to be a pretty safe bet to figure out what your taxes are going to look like. And here's the total annual amount that we're going to use, $4,503. All right, and then let's walk through some of the assumptions I'm using to create the quote, because as you probably know, but not everyone has a strong sense of coming in, mortgages are the pricing, the rate you get, the total cost of your mortgage, the total cost of borrowing money varies based on a variety of factors. It's not just your credit score and how much you're putting down. Right, there's a lot of different factors, and so I'm going to have to use some assumptions that I'm not even including here as far as the quotes that I generated that you'll see in a minute. However, I just want to show you the main assumptions. So obviously we're using the listing price of $549,990. Taxes I just showed you, $4,503 annually. And so taxes and homeowners insurance, those could be paid separately from your mortgage. You could pay those on your own, or you can have the mortgage company pay those. There's different reasons to do that. Generally, they're included as what's most common is they're included as part of your mortgage payment. My dad has a video. My dad's been doing this for 30 years, and he just has tons of details and strategies behind why you would do what. I'll link the video here. He has a video explaining why you might. It's called escrowing taxes and insurance, which means making them part of your monthly payment, paying them, having the lender pay them on your behalf, or pay them on your own. He breaks that down a little bit. I'll link that video here. Homeowners insurance, so I am going to include those as part of the monthly payment. Homeowners insurance, I'm using an estimate of about $150 a year. That's a general estimate that we use that for this price point in our area that we find to be a pretty good average, $150 a month, $1,800 annually. You are the one picking your homeowner's insurance though, so sometimes you can find better pricing or lower pricing. Sometimes you can find more expensive homeowner's insurance. Of course, with insurance, it's just a question of what's covered. So there's going to be a lot of variation there, but that's a pretty good average there of that breaks down to $150 a month. And then I'm assuming a credit score of 700, and this is relevant, but its relevance is a little bit mitigated by the other assumption I'm making, which is that you are a first-time home buyer. Basically, there's been some recent changes that your credit score, if you are a first-time home buyer, your credit score, having a bad credit score isn't quite as negatively impactful as it once used to be for first-time home buyers. So it's still generally going to improve your pricing a little bit on net if you have better credit. But it's not going to be massively impactful. We'll look at it, but the area that it most strongly impacts for first-time home buyers still is in your mortgage insurance. So if you are putting less than 20% down, you have to get mortgage insurance, and that rate of your mortgage insurance, it could be higher, it could be lower, depending on a variety of factors, and one of those key factors is your credit score. Lastly, I wanted to explain what debt-to-income ratio is, and this is just a general concept I want you to be aware of, because it's hard to talk about any of this without being aware of this one key concept, your DTI, or your debt-to-income ratio. As a general rule, there are some exceptions to this. There are different programs that have different ways of going about this, but as a general rule, for this kind of residential primary mortgage kind of conventional loan situation, which is what we're looking at, and FHA is a little bit nuanced, it's still a similar concept. But as a general rule, your debt-to-income ratio has to be less than 50% for you to qualify for the house. And so the way that's figured out is lenders will take your total monthly debts, and that is any other debts you have, credit cards, student loan, car loan, whatever, any other monthly debts you have, plus whatever the resulting housing payment would be. So if they're figuring out a scenario, they take it to see if they would approve you for it. They take the resulting housing monthly payment that you would see, add that to your other total monthly debts, divide that by your gross monthly income, and that number has to be less than 50%. Again, even it's sometimes you can go right up to there, but you can't quite get to 50%. Different programs have different cutoff points, but it's generally going to be about 50% that you have to think of. And that's in terms of qualifying. That's not an affordability rule. Of course, this is not financial advice. It's not, your housing payment should be 50% of your gross monthly income. That's not what this is. This is a qualifying rule in terms of what lenders will grant you. All right, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to start by just demonstrating the difference between the total monthly payment, and then we'll get into what goes into those differences. So both of these scenarios, both are using 50K cash, and you can see that down here, 50K, 50K. However, this scenario here, and you look at that, and you have a monthly payment of $3,700 versus a monthly payment of $4,000. But both are from the same amount of cash. So I'm going to explain how that happens. So on the left, this is, we'll call it the 3% down scenario, and on the right is the 5% down scenario. And so that gets even a little weirder once you see that, because look, this is a 97% debt loan to value, and this is a 93% loan to value. So the question obviously is, why is the 3% down scenario, why do you have a lower monthly payment than the 5% down scenario, and how are they both the same cash all in? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you what is the same between these two monthly payments, these two quotes. These are two different quotes. I'm going to show you what features are the same, and then I'm going to show you what is differentiating them, what makes them different. And then I'm going to finish with explaining a little bit about what the necessary income to qualify for each of these scenarios would be, which if you remember the rule I just explained about DTI, you can do that pretty quickly. So as far as what's the same, you can see homeowners insurance here is $150 and homeowners insurance here is $150. It's the same in both. It's not dependent. That's dependent on the house. It's not dependent on how you structure the loan. Taxes, $375, $375. And then last thing that's the same here is what I already pointed out, is the cash to close, estimated cash to close is about $50,000 in both scenarios. So let's get into what's different, and that'll explain what's going on here. So obviously the difference that sets all this up, the main difference that creates these two different scenarios is the down payment, right? This on the right is I called this a 5% down scenario. it is actually 7% down. On the right is a 93% loan to value, and on the left is a 97% loan to value. So you have different down payments coming in. This one you're putting 3% down on the left, and this one you're putting 7% down on the right. And I'll explain kind of why I did that. But before I do that, let's look at the other specifics that are different, which will kind of help to explain that. So the other features that's different is the principal and interest. You can see in this section here, P&I, principal and interest, the amount of your monthly payment that is principal and interest versus these other proportions is $3,029 in the 3% down scenario. So it's a smaller amount that's principal and interest versus the 7% down scenario, which is $3,360. And the reason for that is obviously a different loan amount, which is the principal, but also a different interest rate. So you can see here, very different interest rates. 3% down scenario, you have a 5.5% interest rate, 6.203 APR. 7% down, you have 6.875% interest rate, 7.123% APR. And here is, and then lastly, I should have pointed this out first. The last difference is this mortgage insurance, which on the 3% down scenario is $160, and on the 7% down scenario is $119. So mortgage insurance, again, is something you have to pay if you put less than 20% down, and the mortgage insurance is going to be greater. It's a higher cost if you are a higher risk, and the 3% down is a higher risk than the 7% down. Again, that's an area that I mentioned credit score would have a bigger impact on. So how do we end up with those different interest rates? How do we end up with 5.5% on the 3% scenario, 3% down scenario, and a 6.875% interest rate on the 7%? That's a big difference in interest rates. And the reason for that is this last difference that I want to point out. The last difference is right here. This section called points or credit. Okay, so points are a fee that you can pay in order to get a lower interest rate. Every time you go to get a loan, the lender has what's called the par rate, which is the going rate if you don't take any credit and if you don't pay any points. That's just the going rate for your scenario. For your borrower profile, that's the rate they have for you. So what you can do is you can go either direction. Typically, you can take a credit towards your closing costs. The lender will pay you a credit to take a higher interest rate, okay? Or you can pay points to get a lower interest rate. And so what we did here, we used the $50,000. Instead of using all of it towards the down payment, which is pretty much what we did over here in the 7% scenario, what we did is we put a hefty amount, $22,000, towards paying points. And the reason we did that is even though it's not going into the house, that gives us a much lower monthly payment. And there could be a number of reasons that you would want to do that. Typically as just a financial strategy of how can I use this $22,000 best? Can I use it best by distributing it into the monthly payment and just taking a little bit higher rate over time, or by paying it up front to get a lower rate and a lower monthly payment? If you're just looking to save money, you have to be very informed and very strategic if you are planning to use points for that purpose, because typically lenders know exactly what they're doing. They're trying to price those points so that they will benefit, so that they make money off of the points, off of the averages. So you have to be very strategic if you're just doing that to make money. It is possible if you know kind of the timeline you expect to be in the loan, and that over that timeline you are going to make money back. However, the main reason you would probably want to do that is if for whatever reason you have the cash available, but you need a lower monthly payment. If that just makes you more comfortable with a lower monthly payment, you're okay with paying the cash up front, but you're not okay with $300 more in your monthly payment, with committing to that So, that's one scenario, just a budget thing, if it makes sense then. However, here's when we really recommend it, is this $3,700 monthly payment versus this $4,000 monthly payment could mean that someone with lower income could qualify for this house in this scenario with 3% down, paying a lot in points, versus this scenario because you need more income to qualify for this scenario. So a lot of times we recommend it as a tool to help you qualify for the house. So that's what helps you end up with a lower interest rate and the same amount of closing costs, same amount of cash to close here of $50,000 in the 3% down scenario versus the 7% down. Because that extra 4% that we didn't put towards the house in the 3% down scenario, we applied it towards points to get you a lower rate to lower your monthly payment. So even though the principal is higher on the 3% down scenario, you have more loan to pay back distributed over those 30 years and 12 months a year. Even though the principal to pay back is higher, the amount that we were able to reduce the interest rate with that money made a bigger dent to bring that monthly payment down. So let's look at what income it would take to qualify for each of these scenarios. So on the left with the lower monthly payment, it would take about $7,428 a month, or about $89,136 a year to qualify for this 3% down because it's a lower monthly payment. Whereas on the right, I would take about $8,000. That one you can do pretty quickly. $8,010 a month, or $96,120 a year. And again, this is in terms of what you could qualify for, what income it would take to qualify for this monthly payment. It's not financial advice on what income would be wise to have in order to take on this monthly payment. All right, if you are wanting to learn more about what it looks like to buy a house and just the home buying process in general and maybe get that process started, my name is Landon Butow, and our team with Cleveland Street Mortgage is licensed in Washington and Idaho. We'd love to field questions from all over the country. However, we are able, so if you're interested in asking questions, find our information and reach out, email or call using our information in the description. If you want to know what it'd be like to work with us to get a loan in Washington or Idaho, we'd be happy to do that to help advise you and help you get a loan. Then you can check out what it'd be like to work with our company. There's a link in the description in this video. You can watch a couple videos on what our process is like. If it looks like it'd be a good fit for you, there will be a button to schedule a call with us or just go ahead and call now. We'd love to chat with you.